Hi there, it's Vanessa from Cove, and you're listening to the 77th edition of The Networker. This week, we're examining how connection is being redesigned. Across curated communities, student campuses, unconventional platforms, event rooms, and corporate dinners, professionals are quietly rethinking what networking is actually for. The shift is subtle but significant. Influence is moving away from accumulation and toward intention. The real advantage no longer comes from knowing more people. It comes from building the right environments where trust, relevance, and alignment can compound. So let's dive in. Zamiha Desai MBE, writing for SME Web, challenges the idea that networking is something you go to. Instead, she presents it as something you architect. Her six-step approach sounds tactical on the surface, but underneath it is a deeper philosophy. Clear intention before arrival, genuine curiosity during interaction, structured follow-through afterward. What stands out most is her emphasis on ecosystem thinking. The most successful networkers are not harvesting contacts. They are building circles of mutual value. They think in terms of quarterly check-ins, warm introductions, and consistent contribution. In this framing, generosity is not moral positioning. It is strategic positioning. Opportunities emerge not because you ask loudly, but because you have made yourself structurally useful. That idea of structural usefulness deepens in an article by Darcy McDonald for Concordia University, featuring executive coach Ted Klein. Klein focuses not on strategy, but on attention. He argues that influence is often built in micro moments most professionals overlook. Elevator exchanges, hallway pauses, casual questions that turn into stories. The most influential leaders, he suggests, do not script conversations. They amplify them. They stay with what the other person offers. In a distracted environment, attention becomes rare currency. When someone feels fully seen, trust forms without effort. Klein's insight reframes networking as presence rather than performance. It is less about expanding reach and more about deepening recognition. Recognition, however, is being reshaped by platforms. Oriana Rosa Royal, writing in Fortune, explores the story of a millennial manager who used Tinder to secure job interviews. On the surface, it feels like novelty, but beneath it lies something more revealing. As digital spaces blur boundaries between personal and professional identity, professionals are learning to treat platforms as distribution channels rather than fixed categories. The lesson is not that everyone should job hunt on dating apps. It is that opportunity flows through underused networks. When traditional channels saturate, unconventional visibility can become an advantage. Yet this also highlights the power dynamics embedded in platforms. Context shapes credibility, and navigating those boundaries requires judgment as much as boldness. That tension between visibility and credibility appears again in an opinion piece by Kara Serpin-Guzel in FS View. She critiques LinkedIn's culture of accumulating 500-plus connections as a hollow badge of professional worth. Her argument is not anti-networking, it is anti-metric obsession. When connection becomes a scoreboard, relationships flatten into optics. Personal branding turns into performance theater. The risk is subtle, but real. Professionals begin optimizing for exposure instead of alignment. The result is wider networks with thinner trust. Her piece is a reminder that scale without substance erodes meaning. Digital reach does not automatically translate into relational depth. Designing environments that restore depth is exactly what Maggie Schmerin addresses in Adweek. She argues that the traditional 4-hour business dinner is not relationship building. It is endurance. Her proposal is not radical. 90 minutes, smaller groups, unified tables, casual settings. What she is really advocating for is intentional friction design. When connection formats are bloated, energy disperses. When they are curated, conversation sharpens. The insight is powerful. Relationship quality is shaped as much by structure as by personality. Environment is strategy. Shorter, better designed interactions can generate more trust than prolonged performative hospitality. Finally, Elaine Pofelt in Forbes examines the rise of paid entrepreneurial communities such as Founders Club and Entrepreneurs Organization. The data signals something important. Entrepreneurs are willing to pay significant fees not for exposure, but for relatability, for spaces where challenges do not need to be translated. These curated communities are less about deal flow and more about shared psychological context. When founders say they are seeking friends who get it, what they are really describing is cognitive relief. In a hyper connected but emotionally fragmented world, belonging becomes premium. And belonging, when curated intentionally, accelerates both resilience and opportunity. Before we wrap up, let's turn to this week's recommendations. Our book of the week is How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. Christensen applies disruption theory not to markets, but to personal decisions. He argues that incentives often mislead us and that marginal compromises quietly reshape integrity. The deeper message is strategic. If you do not define your own metrics, external ones will define them for you. Career choices, relationships, and trade-offs accumulate long before regret becomes visible. The real performance review is long-term alignment with purpose, not quarterly wins. And our podcast of the week is Build Stronger Trust on Your Teams with Rachel Botsman. Botsman reframes trust as a confident relationship with the unknown and warns that modern speed has eliminated the trust pause that once protected sound judgment. In hybrid workplaces, where proximity no longer reinforces credibility, leaders must design clarity intentionally. Trust now requires visible consistency, clear expectations, and early correction before defensiveness calcifies. In fast systems, slowing down briefly may be the most strategic act of leadership. That's all for the 77th edition of The Networker. The thread across every story this week is intentionality. Networking is no longer about volume, duration, or optics. It is about designing spaces where alignment can emerge. From curated communities to curated dinners, from hallway pauses to strategic follow-ups, the advantage belongs to those who build environments where trust can compound. Until next time, stay connected, stay deliberate, and remember, your network is not defined by how many people you reach. It is defined by how intentionally you build. And don't forget, the full edition of The Networker is waiting for you in your inbox. I'll see you next time.